This video is about an executive function called working memory. Working memory is when you use the information you have stored in your brain to work on or solve a problem. Let's hear some examples of working memory.
Working memory is like, an example is like when you're on a test and you're trying to remember like what operation and like what formula you need to use.
Another example that I thought of was, let's say you're about to take a test and your teacher's explaining what's going to happen on the test. You have to remember what your teacher said about the test to help you during the test.
Notice how the students are holding onto information and manipulating it to achieve their goal of doing well on the test. Working memory is not just about storing information in your mind. It's also about using or working with that stored information. Can you think of a time you used working memory in your life or in your math classroom? Let's hear what the students at Stephen Decatur have to say about working memory in the VMT environment.
Working memory works when
you're having a hard time trying to figure out a question, and then you remember a part of a question that you had previously, or like an example, and you use it to help you solve that problem.
For example, when you're working on a slide in VMT, you may need to use your working memory to recall the information from the previous slide in order to solve the problem. When problem solving, you might not only need to remember math concepts from previous VMT slides or questions, but also from previous math classes.
some things that I had to remember was how to dot plot.
When reflecting on their VMT activity, other students also mentioned having to remember how to make a graph in order to complete the activity. There are many moving parts in a VMT activity to keep track of in your brain, like the instructions, new math topics, what is happening, and the mathematical relationships, using the tools, and the chat. Working memory can help you become a better collaborator, but it takes practice. Here are some helpful tips. Make sure to write and explain your thinking in the chat so that you and your group can go back to it.
And my group members put things in the chat, like their ideas in the chat. I have to use those ideas.
Divide up responsibilities so that no one has to try to do too much.
You have to remember to check the chat to see if your partners want to take control.
Manage the pace so that everyone has time to process and talk about everything they are seeing and thinking. You might need to pause or slow down to ask questions or make observations. It's important that everyone in the group is on the same page. Using your working memory is like pulling apart and putting together different pieces of information in order to build the full picture. Math problems can be challenging, but if you remember to rely on your mathematical toolset, like the information provided in the instructions, what you learned during class, math you recall learning last year, or insightful points your friends are sharing in the chat, you may surprise yourself. You know more than you think you know.